This is the story of a person who faces racial discrimination, but fights against all odds and grows and becomes successful. This story dives into the past. We see Texas in 1939, a time when black people were facing major discrimination and oppression. We see a shabby hat boy. This little black boy, named Bernard, is a shoe-shining boy. He sets up his stall intentionally in front of the bank. His customers are all rich white people. He works slowly, so he can hear some financial knowledge these people talk about while they wait. Paying attention, as soon as they leave, the boy writes it down in a notebook. All the valuable financial knowledge he heard is to become a banker. 15 years later, Bernard, now a full-grown man, moves to Los Angeles with his wife Eunice and children. Here, racial discrimination is not as prevalent as in his hometown, so he decides to start his business here. His family is living in a dilapidated utility room of one of his relatives. After some time, he starts working as a real estate agent and searches for houses for sale everywhere in the city. Through keen observation and a mindset of top business acumen, he sees an opportunity because the black community in Los Angeles is overcrowded, while the white community still has many empty houses. Black people have the financial strength and need for rental apartments and homes, but there is no market. So he sees a white-owned apartment with weeds on the front door, obviously not in very good condition. Still, only he sees the advantage of the house's location, which is adjacent to the black area. He goes to the owner and says, "Why don't you sell it to me when only half of the apartments are full? I'll give you $30,000 now and another $5,000 when I rent out all the rooms." Although the owner admires his idea, he doesn't want to do risky business. Before leaving, he suddenly glances at the owner's calendar, which given by the local bank. Immediately after, he goes to the bank to talk to the bank manager, but the manager's secretary, who discriminates against black people, refuses. But Bernard waits outside for the bank manager. After waiting for a few hours at the bank, the manager comes and Bernard stops him immediately. He says, "I know one of your VIP customers. The business I do will benefit him, and I hope you can approve a loan for me." But the bank manager rejects him without thinking. Later that night, he receives a call from the owner and asks, "Did you use my name to get a loan?" He has no choice but to apologize. Unexpectedly, the owner doesn't blame him, but admires his self-belief and determination towards his goal. And then, the owner helps Bernard getting his first loan in life and buys the property. Later, Bernard does some work in that building, and an old white lady comes and sees a black man at her door. She asks with a sharp voice, "What are you doing?" Bernard answers calmly, "I'm renovating the apartment building." The old lady speaks, "Workers like you should be careful," while making a mean face. In response, Bernard says, "Don't worry, this is my building, and I will definitely take good care of it." After this, the old lady goes home angrily and calls the police and said, "A man pretended to be the owner." Police come soon after. Police officers ask Bernard if he pretended to be the owner and contradicted her. But Bernard is well prepared in advance, and he knew something like this could happen. So, he takes out a copy of the legal document related to the property. Then, the police officers realize that the house really belongs to him, so they leave in a huff. That night, Bernard returns to the apartment building. The old lady sees him and immediately tells him to get out because it is not the time for renovation. Bernard still replies calmly, "I am not a renovation worker now. I am the owner." A few days later, she moves out because she doesn't want to live in the same building with black people. As soon as the old lady leaves, Bernard rents out his house to a black lady. Soon enough, the black tenant market is huge, as he has foreseen. The building is quickly filled, and Bernard gives the negotiated follow-up payment to the former owner. The former owner admires Bernard very much and offers to start a business with him. Bernard selects the buildings and calculates the cost and income. On the other hand, the old owner negotiates the transaction and signs the contract. With him in front, white people won't know that they are doing business with black people. They will split profit. The business goes smoothly with cooperation, and they make a lot of money rapidly. Bernard moves to a mansion with his family from a block apartment, making a comfortable life for his beloved family. This is his wisdom. Bernard is a man who plays by his own rules against all odds, and his ultimate goal is to become successful financially. Life is not like a plain road. Life has hurdles also. The former owner who works with Bernard is old and frail and dies suddenly a few years later. His equity in the company is inherited by his wife. His wife discriminates against black people and doesn't want to cooperate. She contentiously offers to buy Bernard's shares at a very low price, and if he disagrees, she will sue him. Bernard is trying hard to prove his cooperative relationship with the old owner. First, he thinks of the bank manager, but the manager avoids Bernard again and cooperates with the white lady. Extremely disappointed, Bernard looks all around the bank. The neat and tidy bank building shows systematically discriminatory fangs everywhere just because of his color. Thinking of this, Bernard's mind rises a bold and unique idea. There are 4 banks in this building, and due to my skin color, they all close doors for this black man. At this moment, he comes up with a brilliant idea. I will buy this building and see who of you dares to discriminate against me again. So, Bernard goes to Joe, another black real estate developer, and shares his idea. At first, Joe thinks he is out of his mind because the land price downtown Los Angeles is very high, and a black person never bought land in downtown LA. But after some moments of discussion, why does he want to buy this building? Because there are several reasons. If he owns the building, banks will not refuse to give him a loan, and most importantly, they will also disclose the real estate trends to him so that his real estate business will be smoother. Joe is amazed by this idea, but after thinking about it, he believes it will work. Although he is extremely wealthy, he is also subject to white people everywhere. If he can step on white bankers on white land, he will make more money. But there is a problem. They still cannot negotiate transactions with white people directly. So, basically, they need a white person as their front face. In this regard, Bernard already has an idea in mind, Matt, who has been helping him in renovations. This guy is an honest man. He's also very ambitious, but does not have any knowledge about real estate. So Bernard and Joe set out to train Matt comprehensively, teaching him golf, high-class manners, mathematical thinking, and real estate. Matt also catches things very quickly, and while playing golf, he can calculate real estate valuations. Just like a young and promising entrepreneur. At a golf club, Matt meets the owner of the bank building. All things go very well. Matt gets the chance to buy the building, and the rest will be negotiated. But Matt doesn't have any idea how to do it. Before negotiation, Bernard helps Matt make all the preparations. For calculating the vacancy rate, Bernard counts the number of lights on in the building after dark, and then gets the estimated value of the building. Through the building's annual revenue and operating costs, Bernard prepares any numbers that might be involved, and Matt memorizes these numbers before meeting with the owner. As a result, Matt is always one step ahead of his boss, no matter how big bluffs saying about his property. In the end, Bernard gets the building that is initially priced at more than $2.4 million for just $1.56 million. From then on, whenever Bernard goes in or out of the building, the president of every bank will come to shake his hand. The little manager who made things difficult for him in the past is shot. With the support of the banking industry, their real estate careers grow rapidly. They break the strict zoning of Los Angeles's black and white segregation single-handedly. Many young and promising blacks moved into white neighborhoods soon after they even get received by the vice president. Several years later, Bernard takes his family back to Texas to visit his father, Britton. The next day, Bernard walks around town with his son. At that time, Texas was the most racist place in America. Before they know it, they are standing in front of the bank where Bernard worked as a shoeshine boy. They meet a young boy shining shoes, just like Bernard used to when he was little. To Bernard's surprise, the boy will only work on the shoes of white people. This little incident touches Bernard and awakens his sense of responsibility to his fellow man. He secretly makes up his mind that he must change the status quo and help the black community in his hometown get better housing. The next day, Bernard visits Joe and tells him that they should buy the mainland bank in Texas. Joe thinks Bernard is out of his mind for even thinking about it, because the racism in Texas is so severe. But Bernard manages to show compelling reasons to make the purchase. In the end, Joe agrees to help Bernard out. They recruit Matt again and use him to be their front man. Once more, they meet with the bank owner, Robert Florence, Sr. and Jr., to discuss the numbers of the deal. Despite Florence Jr.'s suspicions, Sr. sells the bank to Matt and his partners, with the mainland bank acquired. Bernard gets to work and starts helping the African Americans in town get approved for loans. It would seem that Bernard's goal is to help his fellow men get a fair chance at housing, and even money-making opportunities. Things go well for a time, until Florence Jr. starts investigating the loans that their bank approves. One day, Florence follows Matt and meets up with Bernard and Joe. He confronts them about the loans they approved and threatens them with a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department. He says that the department will inspect the bank's operations in 1 month. As Florence Jr. leaves, the guys discuss their next moves. During that time, Matt comes up with a suggestion. He suggests that they buy another bank and transfer the problem loans from mainland to that bank. They discuss the purchase of the Bank of Marlin Moore, and Bernard says the main problem is overseeing the operations of the bank. In response, Matt suggests that he be allowed to run the new bank. Bernard expresses his discomfort with the idea, but he eventually settles with letting Eunice keep an eye on Matt. In the end, Matt gets to run his bank just like he wanted. The next day, Matt meets up with a lawyer and starts signing loan contracts on his signal. Sometime later, Matt receives a call from Florence Jr. regarding clients that want to withdraw all their money from mainland. To make matters worse, a federal bank examiner arrives at Marlin to help Matt. Bernard forces himself to dress up as a janitor so he can get close during the meeting. Unfortunately, it doesn't make a difference, since the examiner discovers a critical problem on several loans. Bernard is in disbelief that the absurd loans got approved. Eventually, they learn that it was Florence Jr.'s doing all along. It turns out that while rushing to run his bank, Matt skipped protocols and used a lawyer that Florence recommended. Through that, Florence was able to sneak in the problematic loans. Sometime later, Bernard and Joe tell Matt that the most rational move they can make is to walk away from the Bank of Marlin, unwilling to let his bank go. Matt makes a move without letting his partners know. Joe learns about his move the next day and rushes to Mainland Bank with Bernard. They confront Matt about the loans while Florence watches the spectacle with a proud look on his face. Bernard tells Matt to get their books, but it's too late. The federal bank examiners arrive to revoke Mainland Bank's license to operate while leaving the building. The FBI arrests Bernard and Joe. Bernard tries to stand his ground, but it's a futile struggle. Sometime later, Bernard and Joe meet up with their lawyer. They learned that their case got dragged along with some racial politics in the country. Meanwhile, Matt talks with Senator McClellan about testifying against his partners in exchange for his freedom. Matt contemplates his next move that night and makes a phone call. Matt follows McClellan's suggestions and testifies against his partners at the Senate hearing the next day. Later that day, Bernard also meets with McClellan and listens to his proposal. He gives him a choice to take an immunity deal and confirm Matt's testimonies, or Bernard can say whatever he wants and go to jail. In the end, Bernard decides to say the words that have been kept in his heart for years. He talks about racial discrimination in the country. Shortly after that, both Bernard and Joe's fortunes got decimated after the hearing. The two also got sentenced to federal prison. Florence Jr. purchases the Mainland Bank for a small fraction of the price paid by Bernard and Joe. Meanwhile, Matt Steiner never got charged with any crime. Several years later, Bernard and Joe get out of prison. Eunice finds it strange that the two men seem happy, even after losing all their fortune. It turns out that's not the case at all. Joe reveals that they have properties next to each other in the Bahamas. Eunice is in disbelief and asks Bernard how that happened. It turns out that the man Matt called the night before his testimony was Bernard. He told Bernard about the senator's deal and apologized to him. In return, Bernard asked Matt a favor before the government could seize their assets. The movie ends after we learn that Bernard and Joe's residential properties were instrumental to the fight against housing segregation in LA, and they still have two mansions next to each other in the Bahamas.